On a frozen Montana highway, an ex-Navy SEAL slammed his brakes when he saw the impossible. An overturned school bus, half buried in snow, and a little girl stumbling out with a yellow glove clutched to her chest. She wasn't running toward safety. She was running because her classmates had been taken, and her teacher dragged into the storm. His K9 moved first, pushing through the blizzard to reach her trembling hands. Then the SEAL stepped forward, voice low, steady, carrying the kind of promise only a broken man could make. You're safe now. No child escapes darkness alone. No man outruns the past that calls him back. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story moves your spirit, subscribe for more tales of courage, faith, and the quiet miracles God still sends into the cold. The wind screamed against the metal shell of the overturned school bus, rattling its cracked windows as if the storm itself wanted to climb inside. Snow slithered through the open emergency hatch, dusting the seats, and the trembling little girl curled beneath one of them. She pressed her small back into the cold floor, hugging her knees so tightly to her chest that her knuckles blanched. Her name was Abby, a slight 8-year-old with a marshmallow soft face, dark curls matted against her cheeks, and eyes large enough to swallow fear whole. Her pink jacket was torn at the shoulder, and her breaths came out in short, panicked puffs. She could still hear the echoes of what had happened minutes earlier. The heavy boots storming into her classroom, the metallic click of guns, her teacher's voice rising in shock, her classmates crying as they were herded onto the bus by 3 men with masks pulled tight over angular faces. Then, the wild ride into the forest, the crash, the jolt so hard she had bit her lip and tasted blood. And after that, silence. Abby squeezed the object in her hand, a tiny yellow glove, a child's glove, belonging to someone she hadn't even recognized in the chaos. It felt warm despite the cold, as if it still held a heartbeat. Maybe it was the only sign left that she wasn't alone, that her classmates were somewhere, still real. She pressed it to her chest like a prayer. Her breath fogged the shadows. She counted it, the way her teacher had taught her. 1, 2, 3. Breathe. But her voice cracked anyway. Miss Harper, please. The storm swallowed her words. Abby knew she couldn't stay in the bus. The men would come back. They had dragged her teacher, Harper Wynne, a woman in her early 30s with a warm, moon-soft face and long dark hair tied in a loose bun, out into the storm. Harper had tried to shield the children, stepping in front of them like a mother sparrow with broken wings. Abby had seen her push a few kids toward the back seats, whispering for them to stay down. But the men, cruel and frantic, had pulled her away. Harper's last look, eyes wide, brave despite the fear, still pulsed in Abby's memory. With trembling limbs, Abby slid out from beneath the seat. The cold met her like a slap. She pushed through the cracked bus door and stumbled onto the snowy ground. The world outside was white and roaring, a blizzard so thick it looked like heaven had shattered into knives of ice. Every gust stung her cheeks raw. She clutched the yellow glove to her heart and forced her feet to move. I have to find someone, she whispered. Someone who can help. No one heard her, except the storm. She took 3 steps, then 4. Then she froze. A sound cut through the wind. A bark, deep, powerful, echoing with purpose. Abby gasped, spinning toward the noise. A figure barreled through the wall of snow, a large German shepherd with a thick brown and black coat and a striking white streak running from its chest to the midpoint of its neck. The dog moved with astonishing grace for its size. Its ears were sharp, alert, and its eyes were a deep amber, intelligent and warm. Old scars crisscrossed its right foreleg, silent proof of battles survived. This was valor, a 7-year-old retired K-9 whose intuition was sharper than the storm itself. At first, Abby flinched. But Valor slowed his stride, lowering his body as if approaching a wounded bird. His breath steamed in soft puffs, and he let out a low, reassuring whine. The little girl reached out, her fingers shaking. The dog pressed his head gently into her palm. The warmth of him melted the last brittle shell of fear she'd been holding. Abby's face crumpled. A sob broke free. She dropped to her knees and hugged Valor's neck, burying her face in his fur. Only then did the man following the dog emerge through the haze of snow. He moved with the deliberate steadiness of someone trained to navigate chaos. His tall frame, broad-shouldered and powerful though slightly lean from years of solitude, cut a dark silhouette against the blizzard. His olive-green military jacket was worn at the seams, as though it had survived storms both inside and outside him. His boots were scuffed, his gloves torn at one fingertip. Snow clung to the short salt and pepper hair at his temples. His jaw was strong, dusted with a rough stubble that hinted he'd forgotten or refused to shave that morning. His eyes, gray-blue and shadowed with old grief, locked onto the overturned school bus, then onto Abby clutching the glove. This was Elias Ward, a man whose silence held more stories than most people's words. A former Navy SEAL whose life had cracked open years ago during a mission gone wrong, one that cost the lives of innocent children overseas. He never forgave himself. Since then, he'd lived alone in the Montana wilderness, with only Valor to remind him of the duty he once carried like armor. When Elias reached Abby, the girl looked up, eyes wet and wide. "They took my friends," she whispered. "They took Ms. Harper too. They have guns." Her voice trembled. "Please, sir. Can you save them?" Before Elias could answer, his gaze fell to the yellow glove in her hand. Something inside him twisted like a blade. A memory, hot, violent, and uninvited, flashed behind his eyes. Rubble, dust, a tiny yellow glove lying on broken concrete, a child's fingers limp inside it. His breath hitched, too soft for Abby to notice, but enough for Valor to flick an ear toward him, sensing the shift in his heartbeat. Elias knelt beside the girl, grounding himself. "Where did you get that?" he asked gently. Abby pointed toward the bus. "Someone dropped it when the bad men pushed us inside." Elias closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, resolve replaced the storm inside. "You're safe now," he told Abby. "I promise." Valor pressed his side against Elias's leg, as though reinforcing the vow. Suddenly, Valor stiffened. His ears shot forward. A deep growl rumbled from his chest, not directed at Abby, but toward the dense wall of trees behind the bus. He stepped in front of her, paws planted firmly, his entire body taut like a drawn bow. Elias felt the shift instantly. "What is it, boy?" he murmured. Valor didn't move. His breath came slow and measured, frost curling from his nose. His gaze pierced the tree line as if he could see something, or someone, moving in the shadows. The wind howled, but for a moment it sounded like something else. Something closer. Something human. Abby clutched Elias's sleeve. "Is someone out there?" she whispered. Elias lifted his chin, listening. The forest was white and endless, but not empty. He felt it too, the ghost of movement, the metallic scent of danger carried on the wind, and beneath it, a strange familiarity he couldn't name. Valor barked once, sharp, urgent. The sound wasn't random. It was a warning, or a sign. Something was coming. Something connected not just to Abby, but to Elias's past. Elias picked Abby up, holding her close to keep her warm. "We need to move," he said. His tone had shifted, no longer gentle but decisive, protective. the voice of a soldier awakening after too long a sleep. "Can you walk?" Abby nodded quickly. "Yes, I can try." "That's my girl. Stay close." He set her down beside him and took a step toward the forest. The wind pushed back, but not hard enough to stop him. Valor trotted ahead, nose to the ground, following trails invisible to human eyes. Abby pointed at the tracks. Those are theirs. The bad men." Elias examined the snow, multiple small footsteps, staggered and frantic, and 3 heavy sets of adult prints, one with a distinct inward tilt on the right boot. Someone injured, someone dangerous. He exhaled. "They're forcing your friends deeper into the woods." "Will they hurt them?" Abby asked, her voice trembling again. Elias steadied her shoulder. "Not if we reach them first." His words weren't dramatic. They were a promise forged from guilt and fire. A vow he should have made years ago, on a different continent, when another child's life had slipped from his hands. He swallowed the memory like a knife. Abby reached for his hand, and to his surprise, Elias didn't pull away. Her small fingers tightened around his, as if she could sense the silent war inside him. Valor barked once more, urging them forward. Elias turned to the forest, his breath sharp in the freezing air, his eyes darkened with purpose. "This time," he said quietly, almost to himself, "I won't be too late." The storm swallowed his voice, but not before Abby heard him. "Too late for what?" she whispered. Elias didn't answer. Instead, he took one final look at the ruined school bus, then at the trail disappearing into the pines. The snow muffled every sound except the steady crunch beneath their boots, and Valor's unwavering steps guiding the way. They walked toward the unknown danger, the unknown truth, the unknown miracle waiting in the dark. And just before they entered the forest, Elias paused. He stared into the shadows where Valor had growled earlier. His jaw tightened. Something inside him cracked open like ice underweight. "Not again," he murmured. "I won't lose them again." Then he stepped forward, and the forest swallowed all 3 of them. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform, where we believe God still sends protectors, sometimes in uniform, sometimes on 4 paws, and sometimes right when hope seems lost. The morning broke with a cold, metallic stillness, one that made the world look polished yet hollow, as if the storm from the night before had scraped away every trace of warmth. Adrian Cross stood outside the glass doors of the Regional Investigations Bureau, snow melting on the shoulders of his uniform, Draven sitting alert at his side. The German shepherd's breath fogged the air in short, controlled bursts, and his amber eyes stayed fixed on the building ahead. Whatever instinct had driven him mad the night before still simmered in his body like heat beneath ice. Inside, the lobby buzzed with frantic energy. Phones ringing, reporters clustering near barriers, officers brushing past each other with clipped urgency. Screens on the far wall streamed the same breaking headline on repeat. Alina Hart, missing in storm. It was the first time Adrian saw her face clearly. A woman in her early 30s, striking in a way that was both elegant and human. Hazel eyes that seemed too soft for the corporate empire she inherited. Warm olive skin, hair like dark silk falling over her shoulders. She looked like someone who smiled more with her eyes than her mouth. Someone who didn't deserve to vanish into a night like the one he had just walked out of. An officer guided Adrian to a briefing room. Draven followed, step steady, tail low. The moment the door opened, cameras flashed. Reporters lined the back wall, lights lit the front, microphones pointed at one man standing alone beneath the glare. Marcus Hart. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with a broad frame that filled out his tailored charcoal suit. His sandy blonde hair, cut short with precision, was styled perfectly despite the chaos. His jawline was strong, face freshly shaved, but exhaustion hung beneath his ice-blue eyes. Most striking of all were his tears. Wet, abundant, performing grief, with the conviction of someone aware that the world was watching. He clutched a framed picture of Elena to his chest. In it, she was smiling. Truly smiling. And Marcus pressed his lips to the glass, as if he might collapse without the anchor of her image. My wife. His voice cracked. My Elena. Please. Please bring her home. The room shifted with emotion. Cameras clicked. A few reporters muttered their sympathy. But Draven growled, soft, almost inaudible, but unmistakable. Marcus didn't seem to hear it. He wiped the tears with a white handkerchief embroidered with his initials, M.H., and leaned heavily on the podium as if his heart had been ripped out. Then a producer called, "Cut, we're clear," and Marcus changed. The tears stopped instantly, evaporating like steam touched by frost. His shoulders squared. He sniffed once, sharply, then folded the handkerchief with mechanical precision. He didn't even bother pretending sadness as he checked his reflection in a nearby monitor, smoothing down a crease in his suit. His face reset into a controlled, emotionless mask. Draven's ears pricked. The dog huffed once, sharply, and sneezed. A behavior Adrian recognized as Draven's way of signaling deception, not danger, not threat, a lie. A very human lie. Marcus finally noticed Adrian and approached, offering a hand. Officer Cross, I'm told you found her car. Adrian studied him, how his handshake was firm but not warm, how his gaze lingered only long enough to measure, not connect. Yes, we believe she survived the crash. That's good, Marcus said, but his tone was flat, too flat. As long as whoever has her understands the value of what they're holding. Draven's growl deepened. Marcus frowned. You should keep that animal under control. Adrian rested a calming hand on Draven's back. He's usually very controlled. He reacts to inconsistencies. The air tightened, but another voice cut through the tension. Vivian Cole stepped into the room like a blade sliding from its sheath. She was in her mid-40s, tall, sharply elegant, with a slender frame and posture that commanded space without effort. Her black dress was fitted, minimalist, and her dark hair was tied in a polished knot. She had high cheekbones, smooth porcelain skin, and a pair of steel-gray eyes that missed nothing, not the cameras, not Adrian, not Draven bristling at her presence. Vivian's voice was cool as she addressed Adrian. Did the kidnappers call yet? Marcus lifted his brows. Vivian, maybe we should... I'm CFO of the Heart Foundation, she said, cutting him off, her tone dry. Her abduction is not just a personal tragedy. It's a financial threat. Our donors need reassurance. Our board needs clarity. No, is Elena safe? No, is she hurt? Just numbers, risk, optics. Marcus shot her a warning glare, but she didn't flinch. Draven studied her in eerie silence. Adrian felt the first coil of something strange inside him. A creeping intuition that both Marcus and Vivian were standing too close to the center of a storm they claimed to fear. A phone rang. A distorted voice filled the room through speakerphone. If you want her alive, prepare 50 million. Instructions will follow. No police, no trackers, no mistakes. Then silence. Vivian exhaled sharply. 50 million? Do they think we meant cash? Marcus rubbed his face. We'll pay it. We'll pay anything. But the shock wasn't the amount. It was something else entirely. The kidnapper knew Elena's exact schedule, her meetings, her route home, even the charity event she canceled 2 hours before leaving. Information only her inner circle possessed. Adrian watched Marcus. Then Vivian. Neither looked surprised enough. Not truly. Suddenly, Draven stepped forward, silent, deliberate, and positioned himself between Adrian and the two executives. Not defensive, not aggressive. Protective. He stared at Marcus first, eyes narrowing, then turned to Vivian and let out a low, guttural sound, unlike the growls before. A warning, a claim, a declaration that these two human beings stood on the wrong side of truth. Adrian placed his hand on Draven's shoulder and felt it. The trembling intuition of a dog who sensed what logic had not yet revealed. Something in this room was poisoned, rotten, and Draven could smell it. Before anyone could address the reaction, the bureau chief entered. Chief Raymond Hale was a tall, broad man in his late 50s, with iron-gray hair and a neatly trimmed beard. His skin was weathered by decades of fieldwork, and his voice carried the firm authority of someone who had buried too many officers to tolerate incompetence. He greeted Adrian with a nod. "Cross, I want you consulting on this case. You found the crash. Your dog might be our best lead." Marcus perked up. "Consulting? Why not leading? He found the car. Give him the full case." Hale shot him a pointed look. "This is a federal-level kidnapping. We follow procedure." Vivian added, "What we need is results, not protocol." Hale ignored her. "Adrian, debrief in my office in 10. Marcus stepped forward again, gripping Adrian's arm harder than necessary. His polished composure slipped for a moment, revealing something sharper underneath. "Find her," he hissed softly. "Do you understand? Find my wife." But his eyes betrayed something Adrian had seen too many times in combat zones. Not fear of loss, but fear of exposure. Draven growled again. Marcus stepped back. Vivian looked between them with a thin, knowing smile, then turned away, heels clicking sharply against the tile. Adrian didn't trust either of them. And Draven, who trusted almost every good soul he met, trusted them even less. As the room emptied, the screens continued flashing Elena's picture, her warm smile now a haunting contrast to the cold calculations surrounding her. Adrian knelt beside Draven. "Good boy," he murmured. "Show me the liars, huh?" Draven nudged his chin against Adrian's hand. One truth was already clear. Whoever took Elena knew everything about her life, and at least two people in this room didn't want her found too quickly. Adrian straightened, jaw set. "Let's go," he whispered. Draven followed, silent as a shadow, but his eyes stayed fixed on the hallway where Marcus and Vivian had disappeared. He would not forget their scent. Neither would Adrian. If you believe that God sends warnings through instinct, through truth, and even through the loyalty of a dog, then like, comment, and subscribe so this story reaches more hearts. The wooden shack shuddered whenever the wind slammed against its warped walls, sending ribbons of cold air swirling around the woman tied to a support beam near the center. Harper Wynn sat with her wrists bound behind her, her back pressed into the splintered wood. She was 32, slender but steady, her long, dark hair messy from being yanked by rough hands. Snowflakes clung to her lashes each time the wind found a crack in the boards. Her skin, pale from the cold, still held a faint warmth in the way her cheeks flushed with worry rather than fear. Even with rope cutting into her wrists, Harper's first instinct was not to panic. It was to count. 1, 2, 3. The names of every child in her class. She whispered them, her breath trembling. Abby, Oliver, Mia, Nathan. With each name, she steadied her heartbeat. With each name, she tried to anchor her courage to something real. Because if she could remember them all, then maybe, just maybe, They were all still alive. A pair of boots stomped across the floor behind her. Duke Rourke, the taller and meanest of the masked kidnappers, paced near the door. He was broad-shouldered with a long, unkempt mane of dirty blonde hair that fell over his sharp cheekbones. His beard was patchy, rough, giving him a feral look. His gray eyes flicked constantly, restless, irritated, like a dog bred for chaos, not patience. He hated kids. Harper could feel it in the way he sneered whenever one of them cried during the abduction. His anger never simmered. It boiled. Duke cracked his knuckles loudly as he walked, trying to intimidate her. But Harper kept whispering her roll call. Duke growled, "Shut up, teacher." Before Harper could respond, the shack door opened with a groan. Mason Creed entered, snow dusting the shoulders of his brown leather jacket. He pulled down his mask, revealing a chiseled jaw lined with dark stubble. His eyes, ice blue and burdened, didn't look cruel at first glance. They looked haunted. Mason was not a man born violent. He was someone shaped by a single devastating fracture in his life. Harper sensed it the moment he walked in, that strange mix of fury and heartbreak simmering under his skin like trapped lightning. He crouched in front of her, resting his arms loosely across his knees. His voice was calm, deep, too controlled. "Tell me something, Harper." The way he said her name made her spine stiffen. "In your class, is there a child who doesn't know who their father is?" Her breath hitched. For a moment she forgot about the cold. She stared at him, trying to read his expression. Why are you asking that?" Mason's jaw tightened. "Answer me." Harper shook her head. "Children don't owe you their private lives." The back of Duke's hand cracked against her cheek before she finished the sentence. Harper's head snapped to the side, and pain bloomed across her skin like fire. She gasped, but she didn't cry. Not with children depending on her. Duke spat. "She talks too much." Mason didn't look at Duke, but his nostrils flared, irritation flashing in his eyes. Harper noticed that. He didn't want Duke hurting her, not out of compassion, but because it disrupted whatever plan he had. That scared her more. When Mason leaned closer, she could see faint lines around his eyes, lines carved by grief, not age. "This isn't about all of them," he murmured. "Just one. One child in that group matters more than the rest, and I intend to find them." Harper's heartbeat thudded loudly in her ears. "These are innocent kids," she whispered. "You don't get to decide which life has value." A shadow moved behind Mason. Silas Boone, the third man, hovered uncertainly near the back wall. He was thinner, younger, around 30, with soft brown hair that never quite stayed in place. His face was long, almost gaunt, with gentle green eyes that didn't match his criminal surroundings. He looked like a man who didn't sleep much, who carried too many regrets for someone his age. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the scarf around his neck. He stepped forward timidly, offering Harper a folded tissue pulled from his pocket. "For the blood," he whispered. His voice was thin but sincere. Harper saw it in the way he held himself. Not like a captor, but like someone wishing desperately to undo what he'd become. Duke snorted. "You're pathetic, Silas." Silas's shoulders collapsed inward, but he didn't take the tissue back. Harper accepted it with a nod. "Thank you." And for a fleeting moment, Silas smiled. But it was a broken, frightened smile. The kind someone gives when kindness feels foreign. Mason rose to his full height, and Harper felt the temperature in the room drop as he stepped away. He paced toward the door, talking to no one and everyone at once. "I know my brother left something behind. I know it. A child. Blood of my blood. He clenched his fists. I won't let the world take that from me, too. Harper froze. Brother. A child. A motive. Suddenly, the pattern emerged like ice cracking beneath her feet. One of her students, quiet, shy, rarely talking about home, had a mother who avoided questions, who never spoke of the past. A mother who once confided in Harper with fear in her eyes. If someone ever comes asking, don't tell them anything. Harper's breath caught. It couldn't be. Or could it? Before Harper could gather her thoughts, Mason stepped outside to speak to someone, or perhaps to the storm itself. Duke followed him, leaving Silas behind. The moment the door creaked shut, Valor barked in the distance, a piercing, echoing sound that sliced through the storm like a beacon. Harper stiffened. Silas's eyes widened. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Silas nodded slowly. A dog shouldn't be out here. But Harper felt something familiar, something like hope trembling through the floorboards. Valor's bark wasn't random. It had intention, direction. Harper knew Elias Ward only in stories, told in passing by another teacher who once mentioned a man in the mountains who carried grief like armor. And she'd told that story to her class to teach them that even wounded people can still save others. The bark echoed again. Silas shivered. Somewhere deep inside her, Harper felt a prayer being answered before she even formed it. Mason returned, shaking snow from his jacket. "We move in 10 minutes, he ordered. "We're taking the kids deeper. We'll separate them into groups. Someone will talk." Harper's heart slammed painfully in her chest. "They're just children?" Mason ignored her, but Duke stepped forward, smirking. "Sooner or later, one of them will slip. They always do." Silas flinched visibly. Harper forced herself to meet his eyes. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Two people trapped in different kinds of cages. Silas swallowed. I can help you," he whispered under his breath when Duke and Mason weren't looking. "Just stay alive." Harper didn't know if she could trust him, but she knew she had no choice. Outside, the wind howled louder. Snowflakes skittered into the shack through every crack like tiny omens. Harper felt each one on her face. Cold, sharp, urgent. She closed her eyes and whispered the end of her roll call. "Everyone, all of them. Hold on." Then she heard Mason's voice outside the door, deep and determined. "If we can't find the child, we keep them all." The blood drained from Harper's face. All of them. Every single one. God help them. If this chapter moved your spirit, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform. Miracles happen in storms, especially when God sends his protectors in unexpected forms. The storm had thickened into a white curtain, swallowing the horizon until the world ahead of Elias Ward dissolved into shifting ghosts of snow. Beside him, Abby trudged through the drifts, her tiny boots sinking deep, but she refused to complain. Valor led the way. His powerful body low to the ground, tail held straight, ears flicking forward as he read the forest like a book written for him alone. Elias watched the dog closely. Valor's steps were certain, purposeful. The trail they followed, though faint beneath the falling snow, was clear to him. As they pushed deeper into the pine woods, the sounds of the world shifted. The wind hissed through branches heavy with frost. A distant creaking echoed, a branch under the weight of ice, or a warning whispered by the forest. Elias slowed, scanning the ground, until something small caught his eye. A toy. A soft, worn plush rabbit with one ear torn and a small patch sewn onto its belly. Abby gasped. "That's Oliver's," she whispered. "He sleeps with it every day during quiet time." Elias picked up the rabbit, brushing off the snow. It was cold, stiffening under the freeze, but recent enough to still hold its shape. They passed through here not long ago, he murmured. He must have dropped this when they rushed them. Abby hugged herself tightly, trembling, not from the cold, but the thought of Oliver crying without his rabbit. Valor suddenly stopped ahead of them. His paws sank into the snow as he lowered his head, sniffing intensely beneath the bark of a fallen pine. Then he whimpered, not the frightened kind, but a deep, mournful sound. Elias stepped toward him, hand instinctively resting on the dog's back. Valor's fur bristled. Elias knelt by the tree. There, half hidden under a branch, a single drop of dark red stained the snow. He touched it lightly with 2 fingers, still tacky, fresh, a drop of adult blood. Elias's jaw tightened. Someone fought back, or someone was punished. Abby's voice quivered. Was it Ms. Harper? Elias didn't answer immediately. He studied the area. No signs of dragging, no small footprints disturbed near the blood. Whatever happened, it wasn't a child. I don't think so, he said softly. This is from one of the adults. Abby let out a shaky breath. Before Elias could stand fully, Valor stiffened again. His ears shot upward, and his body froze like a statue carved from ice. His gaze locked onto the cluster of trees ahead, eyes narrowing. A low growl spiraled from his throat. And then, a voice. Faint, hoarse. Don't shoot. A figure stumbled out from behind the trees. The man lifted both hands in the air, palms open, breath ragged. Snow clung to his hair and beard, making him look older than he was. His name, Silas Boone, was not yet known to Abby or Elias. But Elias had seen enough men in crisis to know the posture of surrender. Silas was thin, his cheeks hollow, his nose slightly crooked as though broken in the past. His trembling hands suggested fear, but his eyes, soft green, rimmed with exhaustion, held something else. Remorse. Elias stepped in front of Abby instinctively. Stay behind me. He kept his tone low, controlled. His military past fell over him like a cloak. Don't move, Elias warned Silas. Who are you? Silas swallowed hard, breath misting into the frozen air. I won't hurt you. I swear it. He looked at Abby briefly, and his face twisted with guilt. I didn't want any of the kids to get hurt. I never wanted that. Valor growled louder and moved closer, teeth bared. But Elias said, Hold. And the dog obeyed, muscles trembling with restraint. I know Mason, Silas continued, voice cracking. I know what he wants. But I'm not like him. I made mistakes. Wrong people. Wrong choices. He rubbed his arm nervously. He took me in when I had nothing, but I didn't sign up for hurting kids. Elias narrowed his gaze. You helped abduct a classroom. Silas's voice faltered. I know. He looked down at the snow. When I saw them crying, something in me, something I forgot I had, woke up. I was one of them once. Lost. Alone. His voice softened. I couldn't let them die. Silas lifted his head suddenly, eyes locking with Elias. You're Ward, aren't you? Elias Ward. Elias froze. Abby looked up in confusion. Valor's growl rumbled again as Elias stepped forward. How do you know that name? Silas wrung his shaking hands. Because Mason talks about you like a ghost, like a nightmare that ruined his life. His green eyes brimmed with something between fear and pity. He thinks you took his brother from him. Elias's breath left him in a cold rush. Memories slammed into him. Gunfire, a collapsing building, a man betraying his mission, the impossible order Elias had to give. He steadied himself. His brother made his choice, Elias whispered, almost to himself. Silas nodded slowly. Maybe. But Mason doesn't see it that way. He thinks there's one piece of his brother left in this world. Silas paused, trembling. A child. Abby gasped softly. Elias felt the weight of the forest closing in. Silas continued. He believes one of the kids in that class is his brother's, his legacy. He wants to find that child, and he'll tear the world apart to do it. Elias felt something dark coil inside him. Where are they holding the children now? He asked. Silas reached into his coat slowly, cautiously. Valor growled, but Elias held him back. From inside, Silas pulled a crumpled sheet of paper, trembling as he unfolded it. I drew it while they weren't paying attention. It's a map. A hunting cabin deep in the frozen marsh. They're keeping them there. But they plan to move the kids soon. He handed the paper to Elias. His hands were shaking so badly the edges fluttered. I'm done running with them. I want to help. Even if it's too late for me. Just as Elias reached for the map, a sharp crack echoed from the woods. A gunshot. Silas jerked violently, clutching his chest as a bloom of red spread across the front of his coat. Abby screamed. Valor lunged forward with a bark that shook the air. Silas collapsed into the snow, gasping. Elias dropped to his knees beside him, lifting his shoulders. Silas, stay with me. Who fired? Was it Mason? Silas's eyes fluttered, breath ragged. Duke, he whispered. He's watching. Always watching. He coughed, staining the snow with red. His gaze locked onto Elias one last time. Ward. Mason planned this, to drag you out, to make you answer. He wheezed. He wants you to feel what he felt. Elias clenched his jaw, fury and dread surging through him. Where is he now? Silas trembled once. Then his hand slipped from Elias's grip. His body stilled. The forest went silent. Even the wind paused. Abby pressed her face into Elias's coat, shaking. Valor nudged Silas's shoulder gently, whining as though mourning a fallen pack member. Elias rose slowly, the map clenched in his fist. His expression hardened, not with rage, but with a sorrow sharpened into resolve. Abby looked up at him, her eyes wet. Why did he know your name? Elias didn't answer. He stared into the depths of the forest, where unseen enemies watched, where Mason walked, carrying a decade-old wound with his brother's name etched into it. We keep moving, Elias said quietly. We don't have time. He turned toward the direction the map pointed, toward the marsh, the cabin, and the children waiting in the cold. Valor stood beside him, fur bristling, ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. Together, the three stepped deeper into the shadows of the forest, leaving Silas Boone behind in the falling snow. Another soul lost in a storm too large for one man to control. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform. Sometimes God sends help through broken people, and sometimes through those brave enough to follow his call. The frozen marsh stretched out before Elias Ward like a white, unbroken sheet of glass, its surface shimmering faintly under the dim winter sky. The air was brittle, sharp enough to sting the skin with each inhale. He stood at the edge of the frozen lake, gripping the crumpled map Silas had given him before dying in the snow. The map showed a rough sketch of the marsh, a narrow strip of land, and at its center, a small hunting cabin perched precariously on thick ice. Elias studied the lines carefully, tracing the path he would have to take, every instinct inside him tightening. That cabin was where Mason had taken the children, where Harper Wynne was fighting to keep them calm. Beside him stood Abby, bundled in Elias's scarf, her breath forming trembling clouds. Her face was pinched with worry, but bravery flickered behind her brown eyes. Valor stood slightly ahead, a solid, powerful silhouette against the snow. His ears twitched, his tail held low but firm. The 7-year-old German shepherd scanned the area with laser focus, reading dangers without being told. His white chest streak caught the faint glow of the sky as he sniffed the frozen wind. "We crossed there," Elias said, pointing to the map, then to the thinnest edge of the woods that led directly onto the frozen surface. Abby grasped his coat sleeve tighter. "Will it hold us?" she asked. Her voice trembled not just from the cold. "It will, if we move smartly," Elias said. "Stay close. Step where I step, and watch Valor. He'll warn us if anything's wrong." They began their slow advance across the frozen marsh. Every step felt like a gamble. The ice groaned beneath their weight, whispering threats. Wind swept across the lake, carrying flecks of snow that stung their faces. Valor moved first, every paw placement deliberate, muscles taut beneath his fur. He didn't whine now. He was fully in work mode, and Elias could feel something inside the dog shift, sharpen. Meanwhile, inside the distant cabin, Harper Wynne gathered her students in a trembling circle. The dim lantern hanging from a hook flickered, casting long shadows over the wooden floor. Her face was pale but determined. With her long dark hair messy around her shoulders and her eyes still bright despite exhaustion, Harper looked like a beacon in a place where light shouldn't exist. The children clung to her, their small hands cold and trembling. She knelt, lowering herself to their level. "Listen carefully," she whispered, brushing snowflakes from the curls on Mia's forehead. "Everything inside you may feel scared right now. And that's okay. I'm scared too." A boy with sandy hair, Nathan, small for his age, with freckles dusting his nose, looked up at her. "But you're a grown-up," he said softly. "Grown-ups don't get scared." Harper felt her throat tighten. She exhaled slowly, steadying her shaking nerves. "I used to believe that too," she said. "But when I was a little girl, something terrible happened at my school. I survived because someone protected me." Her voice wavered but held strong. "Fear doesn't mean we're weak. It means we're still fighting." Nathan's eyes widened, his small fingers squeezing hers. "Are you scared now, Miss Harper?" She smiled, a trembling, fragile smile that somehow lit the room. "Yes," she admitted, "but I won't leave you. Not for a second." Outside, Mason's men patrolled near the cabin. Duke stalked along the rear wall, muttering curses under his breath, while Mason paced inside the shadow of the front porch, glancing repeatedly toward the frozen horizon, as if expecting someone, Elias, to emerge from it. His broad shoulders noticeably tensed each time the ice cracked beneath the wind's weight. Back on the ice, Elias felt the ground beneath him shift. He froze. Valor stopped too, turning his head sharply, staring at a patch of surface a few feet ahead. His ears lowered. A deep, resonant growl rolled from his chest. "Thin ice," Elias whispered. Abby clutched him. Elias backtracked one step, then pressed a reassuring hand to Valor's back. "Good boy." Just as Elias began to guide Abby around the weak spot, Valor jerked his head to the right. His tail dropped. His ears flattened. A low whine escaped him. Fear, but not for himself. He dug his claws into the ice, leaning closer to the ground, as if listening. Elias stiffened. "What is it?" Valor whined again, then barked, once sharp and desperate, at the ice beneath them. Abby gasped. "Is someone underneath?" Elias knelt, pressing his gloved hand to the frozen surface. The ice was thick, too thick for anyone to fall through easily. Yet Valor's behavior wasn't random. It was deliberate, panicked. The dog's breath fogged the surface as he nudged at a specific spot. Elias looked closely, and his blood ran cold. A faint shape moved beneath the ice. Not a person, but a shadow. A shifting blur, like something brushed against the underside of the frozen layer by the current. And then, a soft sound, like a muffled knock. Abby grabbed Elias's coat. Someone's calling for help. But no voice followed, only silence. The wind howled across the marsh. Valor's growl deepened, and he stepped back, pushing his body between Abby and the ice. Elias stared a moment longer, and then forced himself to stand. We keep moving. Someone may have passed through here before the freeze, or... His voice trailed. He didn't say the rest. Or something was dragging victims under the ice. He couldn't shake the thought, nor the look in Valor's eyes that suggested he wasn't imagining it. They carefully continued toward the cabin, Elias's heart pounding harder now. They reached the cabin's outer perimeter, thick logs forming walls blackened with old smoke. From inside came faint whimpers of children, and Harper's gentle voice comforting them. Snow drifted along the roof edges, and the cabin sat crooked atop the ice, its wooden stilts half frozen into the lake's surface. Valor began pacing in a deliberate circle around the cabin. He growled at intervals, sniffing the ice, then glancing at Elias as though trying to warn him of something specific. The dog's fur bristled. He paused, lifting one paw slightly, an unfamiliar gesture Elias hadn't seen since their combat days. It meant, danger beneath us. Move carefully. Elias crouched beside Abby as Valor circled wider. He's telling us the ice is unstable, Elias murmured. If we rush in blindly, the whole place could crack. Abby swallowed hard. What do we do? We wait for the right moment, Elias said. Suddenly, Valor stopped mid-step, his ears pinned forward, his body locked. A small, hooded figure slipped out from the cabin's rear door, moving fast, stumbling in terror. Elias barely caught the motion. Someone's escaping, he whispered. Abby covered her mouth. The figure darted across the ice, running not toward safety, but toward the thin, unstable area Valor had warned about. Elias surged forward. Hey, stop, don't go that way. But the child didn't hear him. They just kept running, driven by pure desperation. Abby cried, Who is it? Why are they alone? Elias didn't answer. He took off across the ice, Valor sprinting beside him, both racing to reach the fleeing child before the ice decided for them. And the chapter ends there. Frozen at the moment where life could break with a single step. If this chapter moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform. Sometimes God speaks through storms, and sometimes through the courage of those who walk across the ice for others. The gunshot cracked across the frozen lake like lightning splitting a night sky. Elias Ward didn't think, didn't breathe. He just moved. His boots tore across the brittle surface of the ice as Duke Rourke leveled his rifle at a trembling child who had fallen while attempting to escape. The boy, a small, wiry kid with dark curls and fear-wide eyes, scrambled backward on the ice, his hands scraped raw. Duke smirked, his breath frosting in the air. Little rat wants to run? Fine, let's make an example. Elias launched himself forward, but Valor moved first. The German shepherd became a streak of brown and black fur against white, muscle and instinct firing in perfect unison. He lunged, slamming into Duke's side with the force of a battering ram. The bullet meant for the child went wild, but it grazed Valor's right shoulder, cutting a burning line through his fur. Valor yelped sharply, stumbled, then regained footing with a guttural snarl. The wound was shallow, but blood stained the snow like ink spilled on parchment. Valor! Elias shouted. But there was no time, because the cabin door burst open and Mason Creed stepped out. His cold blue eyes froze when they landed on Elias, as though the storm itself had found a human form. Mason looked older than his 30-some years in that moment. His jaw tight, cheeks hollowed by grief, the stubble on his face making him look like a man trapped between hunger and heartbreak. Snow clung to his dark hair and the creases in his brow. He lowered his pistol slowly, deliberately. "So," Mason murmured, stepping forward, "you finally came out of hiding." Elias kept his breathing steady. "Let the children go." Mason's laugh was low, bitter. "You think this is about them?" His voice cracked like the ice beneath their feet. "This is about you and him." Elias felt the world tighten. Silas's dying words echoed in his mind. "He wants you to feel what he felt." Mason closed the distance between them, rage tightening every muscle he carried. "You killed my brother," he screamed. "You called it a mission. You called him a traitor. But he was all I had." His voice broke, not with fury, but with devastation. "Did you ever wonder why he turned? Why he did what he did?" Elias swallowed hard, his voice thin but steady. "Your brother's actions endangered innocent lives, children. And you pulled the trigger." Mason spit out. "You ended his life and kept walking. You didn't lose a damn thing." But Elias's eyes, gray-blue and shadowed with guilt, revealed the truth. He had lost everything. "I didn't save them," he whispered. "Not the kids, not your brother. I failed them all." Mason's jaw twitched, a storm breaking across his features. "Liar, you made sure he died alone. That's why I need to know." He took a shuddering breath. If he left a piece of himself behind, if his blood lives on. And there it was. The truth that had been stalking every footstep since the abduction. Mason stepped closer, his voice trembling. "The child I'm searching for. Not my son. Not even mine to claim. It's his, my brother's, conceived before his fall from grace." Abby, hiding behind Elias, gasped. Elias closed his eyes. A weight lifted and landed all at once. "So this isn't vengeance," he murmured. "It's desperation." Mason's lips curled, a smile cracked by pain. "I just need to know someone out there has his blood, someone he didn't betray." Valor, wounded but defiant, limped to Elias's side, growling low as if sensing the shift in the air, something deeper than danger, something old and tragic unraveling beneath the snow. From inside the cabin, children cried. Harper yelled, "Everyone stay down!" She pushed them behind a wooden table, shielding them with her body. The cabin creaked ominously, the weight of fear pressing into every beam. Duke, furious and disoriented from Valor's attack, shoved himself back to his feet, face contorted with rage. "I'll finish them myself," he growled, raising his weapon again. Elias grabbed a broken plank from the frozen ground and hurled it with brutal precision. It struck Duke's wrist, sending the weapon skidding across the ice. Duke roared, clutching his hand, but Elias didn't give him time to recover. He lunged, grabbing Duke by the coat and slamming him into the ground. The ice trembled violently beneath their struggle. Mason didn't intervene. He watched them with hollow eyes, torn between rage and something far more wounded. Snow swirled around him like a halo of ghosts. "Do you see it now, Ward?" he shouted. "You left me nothing but this." He slammed his fist against his chest. "I need to know if some part of him, some good part, survived." Elias stepped back from Duke, chest heaving. Hurting children won't answer that. But Mason's mind had drifted too far into the storm. He raised his gun at Elias. "Then I'll tear the truth from your hands." At that moment, a deep crack ripped through the lake. Valor barked sharply, warning, pleading. Abby screamed, "The ice!" The ground beneath Elias and Mason split with a jagged roar. The cabin itself lurched, tipping as its support slid deeper into the fractured lake surface. Mason lost his footing. Elias instinctively reached for him, but the ice shattered before they touched. Both men dropped. The lake swallowed them. Elias plunged into black water so cold it punched the breath from his lungs. He flailed once, disoriented as the world above turned into swirling, distant light. Mason's silhouette thrashed nearby. Their hands brushed, not in violence, but in a moment suspended in time. Two broken men bound by one mistake, one brother, one truth. And then the darkness claimed them both. Above the surface, children screamed. Valor barked and pawed at the ice, frantic. Abby sobbed, reaching toward the water. The storm howled, swallowing everything. Two shadows disappeared beneath the frozen lake, drifting into the depths with no certainty of who or what would rise again. If this chapter touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform. Sometimes God lets the ice break, not to drown us, but to reveal miracles beneath the darkness. Chaos reigned across the frozen lake as night swallowed what little warmth remained. Emergency lights cut thin red and blue slices through the storm, sirens muffled by heavy snow. Rescue teams struggled across the cracking ice, shouting instructions that vanished into the wind. The cabin where Harper Wynn and her students had been held was now tilted, half sunken, groaning like a wounded beast. Through all the noise, Harper held the terrified children close, her arms wrapped securely around them, refusing to leave until she knew they were counted, safe, breathing. Her face, smudged with soot, streaked with bitingly cold tears, showed exhaustion and fierce determination. Valor limped among the rescuers, ignoring his own injury. The German shepherd's fur was stiff with frost and blood, his right shoulder scratched raw where the bullet had grazed him. But none of it mattered, not when he could still smell Elias beneath the ice. He kept running toward the fissure where Elias and Mason had disappeared, whining, barking, then pawing at the frozen rim until rescuers had to pull him back for fear he'd fall through as well. His eyes, amber, expressive, loyal, never stopped scanning the water. Every sound made him jerk his head. Every crack of ice made his tail stiffen with hope or dread. "Where is he?" Abby cried, clutching Harper's hand. He was right there. He tried to help that boy. He... Harper knelt, embracing the child, her own breath shuddering. "We don't know yet, sweetheart. We don't know. They're still searching." But her voice betrayed a tremor she couldn't hide. She'd seen Elias only for a moment before the collapse, just long enough to recognize the haunted look of a man willing to die for strangers. Divers dropped into the icy water, their figures barely visible beneath the searchlights. A medic, a tall woman with graying black hair and steady hands, worked on Valor's wound, cleaning it with gentle precision. Her face, stern but kind, reflected years of hardened experience. Her name was Marjorie Hale, known among rescuers as a woman who never panicked, no matter the catastrophe. She whispered to Valor, brushing his fur, "Easy, big guy. You're the bravest one out here." Valor didn't respond, except to push forward again, trying to get back to the water's edge. Marjorie sighed. "Lord help us. He's not giving up on his man." Hours blurred into one another until dawn stretched cold fingers across the marsh. The storm finally eased, leaving a pale gray calm in its wake. Steam rose from the cracks in the lake as divers surfaced repeatedly, each time shaking their heads. Then, on the 11th dive, a muffled shout broke the silence. Two divers broke through the surface, hauling a limp figure upward. They dragged him across the ice toward a stretcher. His face was obscured behind a mask delivering oxygen. Frost clung to his beard and lashes. "Is it him?" Harper asked, gripping Abby's shoulders. Rescuers couldn't answer, not yet. The man had a muscular build, dark hair matted with ice, a beard outlining sharp cheekbones. But hypothermia made identification difficult. They rushed him toward the lights, voices rising in urgency. Valor let out a sharp bark, half hope, half anguish, and strained against Marjorie's hold. His tail quivered. His eyes shone painfully bright. But the rescuers placed the unconscious man into an ambulance before anyone could confirm who he was. The doors slammed shut. A siren wailed into the cold morning as it sped away. Beside the lake, Harper whispered, "Please, let it be him." Abby held her tightly, crying softly. And Valor, moments before collapsing from exhaustion, rested his head on the ice, eyes fixed on the path the ambulance had taken. Later that day, as search teams continued looking for Mason's body, Valor suddenly jerked upright from where he'd been resting under a ranger's reflective blanket. His eyes snapped toward the tree line. A figure stood there, far, far beyond the caution tape. Tall, wearing a heavy coat, hood drawn low, motionless, watching. Harper followed Valor's gaze. "Do you see something?" But when she blinked, the figure was gone, vanishing into snowfall as if swallowed by heaven itself. Valor stared long after, ears tilted, breath sharp. Something inside him recognized the presence, yet the storm carried the truth away. By nightfall, officials announced what they feared. Still no sign of Mason Creed. The body may be unrecoverable beneath the ice. A statement both chilling and strangely incomplete. Weeks passed before the world regained a sense of normalcy. The children returned to school, their laughter quieter, but healing with each day. Harper walked the halls with renewed gentleness. Trauma lived behind her eyes, but kindness guided her every step. She carried herself with more caution now, as though every unexpected sound still sent an echo of fear through her ribs. Yet she smiled. For the children, for the sake of moving forward. In her classroom, she arranged a small circle of chairs each morning. One chair she always left empty. She never explained why. She didn't need to. The students sometimes glanced at it with soft curiosity, sensing without understanding that the empty chair belonged to someone who had saved them without asking anything in return. Someone who had walked into a collapsing world to bring them out. Valor became a gentle guardian of the school. Though not officially allowed inside, he lay faithfully at the entrance every morning, greeting each child with a slow wag of his tail, letting them pat his head, feeling the warmth of their thankfulness. Harper arranged for a soft blanket to be placed near the doorway where he rested. He seemed lighter somehow, yet still searching. His eyes drifted often toward the horizon, especially toward the direction of the lake. One afternoon, as Harper dismissed her students, Mia tugged her sleeve. "Miss Harper, is Mr. Elias coming back?" Harper paused. Her own heart fluttered with questions she still didn't have answers for. "Some heroes don't stay in one place," she said softly. "But they watch over us, even when we don't see them." As dusk settled, Harper noticed Valor sitting unusually still at the edge of the schoolyard. Snow drifted around him, settling on his fur. He was staring past the fence, toward the road. Harper followed his gaze, and her breath stilled. A man stood there, partly hidden by snowfall. Tall, shoulders broad beneath a heavy coat. His presence felt familiar, like the echo of a memory that refused to fade. Harper stepped forward instinctively, warmth rising in her chest. But before she reached the fence, the figure turned away. He walked slowly into the haze of winter, vanishing as gently as he'd appeared. "Elias?" she whispered, though no one answered. Valor remained motionless until the man was completely gone. Only then did he lower his head, not in defeat, but in recognition. Winter lingered, coating the lake with a stillness that never quite felt peaceful. And one evening, as Harper locked up the classroom, Valor suddenly lifted his head. His ears shot upward, sharp as arrows. His tail stiffened. His eyes pierced the distant white landscape. Something, some faint sound or presence, called to him. A whisper across the ice. A heartbeat beneath winter's quiet breath. Harper gasped softly. "Valor? What is it?" The dog didn't blink, didn't move, didn't breathe. He stood like a sentinel touched by heaven, listening to something only angels or wounded warriors could hear. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform, where we honor the miracles God sends us, sometimes in human form, sometimes in paw prints. In every storm we survive. There are moments when the world feels unbearably cold and impossibly dark. Yet, it is often in those very moments that God sends a spark of light, sometimes in the form of a stranger, sometimes in the courage we never knew we carried, and sometimes in the quiet faith of a loyal companion. Miracles do not always arrive with thunder or revelation. More often, they come through small acts of bravery, silent prayers whispered in fear, or the unexpected hand that lifts us when we fall. As we return to our daily lives, may we remember that divine protection is never far from us. God walks beside us in every struggle, guiding our steps through the ice and leading us home when the path is lost. And when we witness goodness in others, when someone chooses compassion over anger or hope over despair, we glimpse the very heart of His grace. If this story moved you or reminded you of the unseen ways God works in our lives, please share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to this channel, and pass the message forward. May the Lord watch over you and your loved ones, and may His blessings surround everyone who listens to this story.